Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into MapMyIndia's Q3 FY25 performance.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And we've got kind of the whole set of materials. We've
Mhm.
got their financial reports, an investor presentation, press release,
Yeah.
and some questions that someone had about the results.
Interesting.
So should we decode all this and see what it means for their future?
Absolutely. And I think what's really fascinating here is we're not just talking about numbers, right? We're talking about a company that's really at the heart of how we live and interact with the world.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump into the numbers then. MapMyIndia's Q3 FY25 revenue grew by a pretty solid 24.5% year over year,
Wow.
reaching 115 crore.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's not bad. And if we look at the 9-month revenue, that also shows a solid increase of 17.3%, hitting 320 crore. EBITDA for Q3 FY25 landed at 42 crore, showing a growth of 15.7% year over year. So I mean, those are some big numbers. What are they telling us?
No. I mean, these are really encouraging figures, right? We're seeing consistent growth in revenue, both quarterly and year to date,
Yeah.
which suggests they're not just kind of keeping up, they're actually winning.
Yeah.
And that steady EBITDA growth, again, suggests they're managing their costs well, which is really important as they grow.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like things are looking pretty good financially for them. But what is driving this growth? Now, we know MapMyIndia plays in two kind of main markets. You have automotive mobility tech, or A&M,
Right?
and then you've got consumer tech and enterprise digital transformation, C&E.
Yeah.
Are those both performing equally well?
That's a great question. And it's actually here that we see MapMyIndia making some really smart moves.
Okay.
So the C&E revenue jumped by 39% year over year in Q3.
Huge.
Yeah, reaching 65 crore. So that's almost double the growth rate of A&M, which still had a respectable 9% increase, hitting 29 crore.
Okay, so it seems like they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're finding success in multiple areas. But what's behind that surge in C&E?
Well, they've scored some pretty significant deals.
Okay.
Like they managed to get a deal with a leading global social media network for all of their app platforms here in India.
Wow.
And they're also doing really well in the quick commerce and BFSI sectors.
Yeah.
So those are areas that are really, exploding right now.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like they're really riding the wave of some pretty major trends, things like the rise of online shopping and digital financial services and just people being more and more online.
Right.
It's really cool to see them kind of grabbing those opportunities and going for it. Now let's take a little bit of a look under the hood. We know they have these two core business lines, map-led and IoT-led. Can you kind of break those down for us?
Sure. So MapLed, as you can imagine, focuses on, map data, navigation services, licensing. And that actually saw a really remarkable growth of 33% in Q3, hitting 87 crore.
Really?
Yeah. Now, IoT-led, which is where we see the sales of hardware like GPS trackers and dash cams, grew by 4% in the quarter, reaching 27 crore.
Okay, so it sounds like their core, map-based offerings are doing really well, but IoT is maybe lagging a bit behind. Is that something to be concerned about?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
You got to remember that MapMyIndia's real strength is in its map-based offerings.
Yeah.
That's really where they've kind of solidified their position as a leader.
Yeah.
And that's reflected in the really stellar performance of that map-led business. But there's a little bit more to the IoT story.
Okay. Tell me more.
So while the overall sales of, these IoT devices might seem, a little slow, their subscription services within that segment are telling a very different story. Those subscriptions actually surged by 31% year on year.
Interesting. So even though they're not selling as many devices, they're locking in customers for the long haul.
Right.
Through those subscriptions. That's a smart way to build that steady revenue going forward. Now, what about profitability? I mean, are they actually making money as well as they're growing?
That's a key question. Right? And despite the really strong revenue growth, the EBITDA margin did dip a tiny bit in Q3 FY25 to 36.4% compared to 39% the same quarter last year.
Okay.
Now that might raise an eyebrow for some, but let's dig in a little deeper.
Yeah, a drop in margin isn't always a bad thing, especially if it's due to, strategic investments.
Exactly. And that's precisely what's happening. So we see MapMyIndia increasing their spending on technical services outsourcing,
Yeah.
especially for field surveys related to government contracts. And then they're continuing to invest heavily in the Mapples app and other, consumer-facing activities.
So it's not shrinking profits. It's just, a calculated decision to invest in growth.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, speaking of the future, their 5-year plan sounds incredibly ambitious.
It does.
They're aiming for like a whopping all 1,000 crore in revenue
Ambitious.
by FY27, FY28, and that translates to a projected CAGR of 35-40%. Is that even achievable?
It's a bold target, no doubt.
Yeah.
But when you look at their track record and the potential of this market, I don't think it's entirely out of reach. And their strategy for getting there is multifaceted. They're focusing on scaling that customer reach across all segments, pushing the boundaries in product and technology leadership, and they're even exploring strategic acquisitions to kind of, accelerate that growth. Yeah. And then on top of that, they're really placing a big bet on the consumer market with that Mapples app and their gadgets.
So you're saying that, it's a steep climb, but they've got a plan to get there.
They do.
Now, you know what I'm curious about?
What's that?
They call themselves a deep tech company,
Yeah.
and they keep pushing this vision of a digital metaverse twin of the real world. What does that even mean?
Right. How does it fit into everything else they're doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's where things get really, really interesting. And it's definitely something you want to pay close attention to. So they're building, 3D, 4D, even photorealistic maps, right? Packed with all this hyperlocal data. It's like they're creating this digital mirror of our physical world. This digital mirror of our physical world. And it can be used for like everything, from navigating traffic to planning entire cities, and even, as they put it, interacting with the metaverse.
Wow, that sounds like straight out of a sci-fi movie. Is this just a futuristic dream, or are they actually putting this technology into action now?
Oh, it's already happening. Remember that project they did mapping COVID-19 vaccination centers on the CoWIN platform?
Right.
Or the work they did on 3D mapping for flood management in Patna?
Yeah.
This isn't just, fancy tech. This is about solving real-world problems, today.
Yeah, okay. So they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. And it seems like they're strategically aligning themselves with a lot of these government initiatives, government policies. Their investor presentation mentions those new geospatial guidelines,
Right.
which predict the Indian geospatial market to hit 1 lakh crore by 2030.
It's massive.
That's a huge opportunity.
It is.
Do you think Map My India is poised to grab a big piece of that pie?
They certainly seem determined to do so. I mean, that 5-year plan lays out some pretty aggressive growth targets.
Yeah.
They're pulling out all the stops to reach them, expanding their customer base, investing heavily in R&D, even exploring acquisitions. They're really firing on all cylinders.
It's impressive to see that level of ambition, in a company. But what about their business model? I mean, can they sustain this level of growth and investment in the long run?
That's a crucial question. And it is encouraging to see their focus on building a sustainable business.
Okay.
So their emphasis on subscription-based services, both for IoT and Maple offerings,
Right.
suggests that they're really thinking long-term. They're not just, chasing quick wins. They're building, they're laying the foundation for those recurring revenue streams.
Yeah.
Which is vital for any company, but especially in a fast-paced field like tech.
For sure. So it sounds like they're building a solid financial foundation for the future. Now let's talk about the people actually using their products and services. Who are their customers, and how are they catering to their needs?
Their customer base is surprisingly diverse.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking automotive giants, tech startups, government agencies, you name it. And that really speaks to the kind of wide range of applications for what they're offering.
It's like they've cracked the code to appeal to all these different, verticals.
Right.
But how are they managing to serve such different needs?
Well, they've divided their market into those two main categories that we've already talked about.
Right.
Automotive and mobility tech, A&M.
Yep.
And then consumer tech, enterprise digital transformation, C&E. And this allows them to kind of tailor solutions to each sector, addressing the unique challenges that each one faces.
It's interesting how they're balancing those two segments.
Right.
Are they performing equally well in both?
Well, they've highlighted some pretty impressive figures in their investor presentation. So they're claiming a massive 80% volume market share.
Wow.
In automotive OEMs with connected solutions.
That's huge.
They're also working with over 880 customers
Okay.
on their SaaS, PaaS, and MOD platforms.
Wow, those are really impressive numbers. They clearly have a strong, hold in those markets.
Yeah.
But are they content with their current reach, or are they looking to expand further?
Oh, they're definitely not resting on their laurels.
Okay.
I mean, that 5-year plan includes some really ambitious expansion goals. They're aiming to triple their automotive OEM customer base, increase corporate customers fivefold, and grow their government customer base sixfold.
Wow.
And they're even targeting a tenfold increase in that mobility customer base, which is basically, everyday people like you and me
Right.
using the Mapples app, using the gadgets.
Those are some bold targets. It sounds like they're really setting their sights high.
They are.
But do they actually have a realistic plan to achieve these goals?
Well, they're backing up these, ambitious goals with some pretty concrete strategies. So they're investing in product development, particularly in, cutting-edge areas like AI, 3D mapping, real-time updates.
Yeah.
They're actively exploring strategic acquisitions
Okay.
to accelerate their growth and get into new markets.
Hmm.
It's clear they're not just dreaming big. They're taking action.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see they're not just relying on organic growth, but also looking at these strategic acquisitions to boost that expansion.
Right.
But let's not forget the human element. Who's leading this charge?
Right.
Are they building a strong team to execute this vision?
Yeah. They've assembled a really strong management team with decades of experience in the industry. And they're also putting a lot of emphasis on employee development and retention,
Yeah.
which is critical in today's tech landscape.
For sure. So they're not just focused on, acquiring customers and technologies, but also investing in their people.
Yeah.
Which is great to see. So it sounds like they're building a pretty solid foundation for long-term success. Now, let's kind of dive into their products and services a little bit. What exactly are they offering, and what sets them apart from the competition?
They offer a really comprehensive suite of
Yeah.
solutions. I mean, we're talking everything from basic map data and navigation to, advanced fleet management, geospatial analytics,
Okay.
even drone-based solutions.
Wow.
They've really diversified their offering,
That's a lot.
creating lots of avenues for revenue generation.
Yeah, for sure. But with so many different offerings, are they able to maintain that, high level of quality and innovation across the board?
Well, if you look at their product roadmap,
Yeah.
it really reveals a company that's constantly innovating, constantly pushing boundaries. They're not content with offering just basic mapping services.
Right.
They're building cutting-edge technologies like AI-powered map updates, photorealistic maps, even integrating with emerging technologies like the metaverse.
Okay.
They're not afraid to experiment.
Yeah, they're not afraid to experiment and kind of stay ahead of the curve or anticipate those future trends.
Right, exactly.
Now, we've talked a lot about their B2B offerings, but what about the average consumer? I mean, are they making efforts to reach a wider audience?
Absolutely. They're making a big push into the consumer market with the Mapples app,
Right.
which offers a bunch of mapping and location-based services.
Yeah.
And it has been gaining some traction.
Cool.
They've also launched a line of Mapples gadgets,
Yeah.
which includes, vehicle trackers, dash cameras, navitainment systems.
So they're not just targeting businesses and governments, they're trying to make their tech accessible to everyone. But with like big players like Google Maps already kind of dominating that consumer market,
Yeah.
can they really make a dent?
It is a competitive landscape for sure,
Yeah.
but their focus on India gives them this kind of unique advantage.
Okay.
They're not just trying to, adapt a global product to the Indian context.
Right.
They're building solutions specifically for India.
Yeah, that's a smart approach. By catering specifically to India, they might be able to kind of carve out that, that niche for themselves. But with these really ambitious goals and a rapidly evolving market, they're bound to face some challenges, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, operating in such a dynamic and competitive industry comes with its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
So they're constantly facing this pressure to innovate, adapt to new technologies,
Yeah.
navigate a complex regulatory landscape.
And they kind of acknowledge some of these challenges in their investor presentation. Right?
Exactly. So they specifically mentioned the low penetration of connected car features in India compared to global markets,
Yeah.
which is, obviously a challenge for that automotive segment.
Hmm.
They also highlighted the need to constantly innovate and stay ahead when it comes to technology adoption.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the ever-evolving government policies and guidelines are going to play a huge role in, shaping the industry.
For sure. So it sounds like they're facing a pretty complex and demanding environment, but from what we've seen so far, they seem to have a pretty good grasp of those challenges and they're actively working to address them.
Right.
Now, there's one aspect of their strategy I find particularly interesting.
What's that?
Their emphasis on make in India.
Oh, yeah.
They seem to be really pushing that angle both in their messaging and their product development. What do you make of that?
That's a great point. It is a theme that runs through, all of their communication. They're proud of their indigenous technology, their homegrown mapping data, their commitment to building solutions specifically for India.
It's interesting how they're tapping into that sense of, national pride.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a genuine commitment or just a clever marketing tactic?
It's probably a combination of both.
Yeah.
But regardless of the motivation, it's a smart strategy.
Hmm.
By aligning themselves with the Make in India initiative, they're tapping into a growing sentiment of supporting Indian innovation and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And, potentially gaining a competitive edge.
And it seems to be resonating with consumers.
Right.
I mean, their Mapples app, which they very proudly promote as India's own,
Yeah.
has been receiving, positive reviews, clawing those app store charts. They're even positioning their Mapples gadgets as superior alternatives to foreign brands, emphasizing those features specifically designed for Indian roads and driving conditions.
It's a very clever way to kind of appeal to that growing desire for self-reliance
Yeah,
and supporting, homegrown brands.
for sure. But it's not just about, appealing to emotions, right?
Yeah.
Their focus on the Indian market really allows them to develop those highly localized solutions that address very specific needs and challenges. They have a deep understanding of the Indian landscape,
Right.
from the intricate network of roads to just the unique cultural nuances,
Yeah.
which gives them a distinct advantage in creating products and services that really resonate with Indian users.
Absolutely.
It's like they're not just building maps, they're building kind of a digital reflection of India, one that takes into account all its complexities, its specificities.
Right.
Now let's talk about, the financial side of things. How are they making money? And how sustainable is their revenue model?
Well, their investor presentation actually provides some insightful details about that, their revenue model and growth trajectory.
Right.
So they've adopted this multi-pronged approach to generating revenue. So you've got things like annuity contracts with automotive OEMs,
Right.
subscription-based services for their SaaS, PaaS, and MaaS platforms, even transactional revenue from API calls, and per-use charges for specific features.
Okay. So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right.
They've diversified those revenue streams, which is a smart move for mitigating risk and, ensuring multiple avenues for growth. But are they actually making money, or are they just, burning through cash to fuel that expansion?
Well, their financial performance so far indicates that their strategy is working.
Yeah.
I mean, they've consistently achieved revenue growth, maintained healthy margins, built a really strong cash position. They're even projecting ambitious growth targets, for the next 5 years, which suggests they're confident they can continue to generate profits
Yeah.
while expanding their business.
It's encouraging to see that they're not just focused on growth at any cost. They're also paying attention to that, that bottom line.
Yeah.
But of course, projections are just that, projections.
Right.
The future is always uncertain.
Always.
What are your thoughts on their ability to achieve those ambitious goals and maintain their position in such a, rapidly evolving market?
While there are always risks and uncertainties in any business, Map My India seems pretty well positioned to capitalize on the growth opportunities in this market. They've got the technology, they've got the data, a strong team, a clear vision.
Yeah.
And that commitment to make in India could be a winning formula in the long run.
It's fascinating to see how they're weaving together kind of cutting-edge technology, a deep understanding of the Indian market, and that strong sense of national pride.
Yeah.
But there is one question that's been lingering in my mind throughout this entire deep dive.
What's that?
With their ambitious plans and this, rapid expansion, are they at risk of overreaching, losing focus? How can they ensure they maintain that, that quality, that innovation as they scale their operations?
That's a great question, and it's one that a lot of rapidly growing companies grapple with. Maintaining that focus, ensuring quality as you scale, it can be really challenging. It requires careful planning, disciplined execution, a strong commitment to core values.
So what should we be watching for, kind of as Map My India continues its journey?
Yeah.
What are some key indicators of their success or even potential red flags that we should be aware of?
Here are a few things to kind of keep an eye on as Map My India's story unfolds. So first, innovation. Can they maintain that pace of innovation?
Right.
Can they continue to develop those cutting-edge solutions that, meet the evolving market needs?
Hmm.
So look for new product launches, strategic partnerships, investments in R&D. Those are good indicators of their commitment to staying ahead. The second thing is market expansion. Will they be able to successfully expand their reach into new markets,
Yeah.
both domestically and internationally? So keep an eye on their customer acquisition numbers, strategic partnerships, any potential acquisitions they make. Third thing is financial performance. Can they sustain that revenue growth and maintain healthy margins while they're investing in their future? Pay attention to their quarterly earnings reports, revenue growth rates, profitability margins. And then finally, talent acquisition and retention. Will they be able to attract and retain top talent
Right.
in such a competitive market?
Yeah.
So look for news about key hires, employee development initiatives, their overall company culture.
Those are some really excellent points to consider. So,
Yeah.
as we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
it's pretty clear that Map My India is a company with a really compelling story, ambitious goals,
Yeah,
and the potential to make, a really significant impact.
they do.
But their journey is just beginning, and it'll be very interesting to see how they navigate those challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
Absolutely. And as they continue to evolve and expand, we'll be here to help you make sense of it all.
One deep dive at a time. As we've been kind of exploring Map My India, it's become clear they're not just building a business,
Right.
they're building a vision.
Yeah, it's true.
And a big part of that vision seems to be this idea of a digital metaverse twin of the real world. It sounds, incredibly ambitious,
Yeah.
but also a bit abstract.
Right.
Can you help us understand what this actually means, like for everyday people like us?
Sure. So imagine a world where you could experience any location virtually before you even set foot there. You
Yeah.
could explore a new city
Wow.
from your couch, try on clothes in a virtual store, or even attend a concert that's happening on the other side of the world.
That sounds amazing. But is that really what Map My India is aiming for?
It might sound futuristic,
Yeah.
but they're laying the groundwork right now. They're creating these incredibly detailed 3D and 4D maps
Okay.
that are not just visually realistic, but also packed with real-time data.
Okay.
Think about it. You could use these maps to find the least congested route home, track a delivery, or even visualize the impact of a natural disaster.
So it's not just about creating these, cool virtual experiences. It's about using this technology to solve real-world problems.
Make our lives easier and safer.
Exactly.
And that's where their focus on making in India becomes even more significant, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We talked about, their emphasis on using indigenous technology, building solutions specifically for India.
Right.
But how does that tie into this kind of grand vision of a digital twin?
Well, by focusing on India, they're able to create a digital twin that's uniquely tailored to the country's specific needs and challenges.
Okay.
They understand the nuances of Indian cities, the complexities of its infrastructure, and the cultural factors that influence, how people move and interact.
Right.
This understanding allows them to create a digital twin that's not just a replica,
Yeah.
but a truly valuable tool for solving India-specific problems.
That makes sense. It's like they're not just building a map, they're building kind of a mirror that reflects the soul of India,
Right.
but in the digital form. Building such a complex and ambitious project requires a lot of resources.
For sure.
How are they funding all of this?
Yeah.
Well, their investor presentation outlines a pretty diverse revenue model
Okay.
that combines long-term contracts, recurring subscription fees,
Mhm.
and even transactional revenue. They've got a strong track record of financial performance,
Yeah.
and their commitment to a sustainable business gives them the flexibility to invest in, these long-term projects.
So they're not just chasing short-term profits, they're building for the future. But of course, no business is without its risks.
Of course not.
What are some potential challenges that Map My India might face as they kind of pursue this vision?
Well, I think one challenge is just the sheer scale and complexity of this project,
Yeah.
creating a digital twin of an entire country.
It's massive.
It's massive. It requires coordinating so much data, ensuring accuracy, keeping everything up to date.
Yeah.
they're going to have to invest heavily in their technology infrastructure, in talent, to be able to pull this off.
And then there's the competitive landscape. They're not the only players, doing digital mapping and location intelligence. How can they stay ahead of the curve and make sure their digital twin stays the kind of the best, the most valuable offering out there?
Innovation is key. They have to constantly push those boundaries,
Yeah.
explore new technologies, incorporate user feedback, and make sure it's useful and engaging.
Okay.
Building strong partnerships is also going to be crucial,
Yeah.
with other tech companies, government agencies, to be able to access all the data and resources they need.
So it sounds like they have a lot on their plate.
They do.
But from what we've seen, Map My India seems to have the vision,
Yeah.
the talent, the determination to overcome these challenges. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Map My India,
Yeah.
what's the one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think the big takeaway here is that Map My India is not just a company, it's a story. It's a story of ambition, innovation, and the power of technology to transform things. They're not just mapping roads, they're mapping the future of India. And as the journey unfolds,
It's a story worth following.
it really is.
Yeah.
So, to our listeners out there, keep an eye on Map My India. They might just be the ones to shape how we live, work, and interact with the world around us.
In the years to come. And we'll be here to keep you informed every step of the way. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time, happy exploring.